the show that helps people who empower people at work take their next step in learning all about trends they may have missed that impact business and our feedback as consultants who are in the trenches, who work with people every day. So we cover a whole host of topics, whether it's the not so sexy stuff as compliance and law and labor, to some of the sexy stuff like relationships and dating, which if you missed our last episode, go ahead and check that out. But I'm Joey. I'm the founder of Jumpstart HR and one of the hosts here at While We Were Working. And I'm joined by Summer Keytron, who is another host here, as well as our consulting practice manager. Summer, what's going on?
Hey, Joey, it's another great day. As always, thrilled to be here on the pod with you. And yeah, we always have some really cool topics. And I feel like I say this often, but I'm really looking forward to chatting about these and also hearing from our audience on what they think and new topics we could cover on future shows. But how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. We've got a fun episode. This is sort of our social media run. So last week we talked about Twitter and Threads. And this week we're talking about TikTok trends and should your business be worried about some of the trends that are getting the most views on TikTok. And then we are talking about something in our consultants corner that everyone should be paying attention to. And that is workplace communication challenges. So how do you handle poor or communication, miscommunication, workplace gossip? And how do you do that in a remote environment as well? So we've got a fun episode. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Summer, if you want to kick us off with While We Were Working and let the folks know what it is and what article we're covering today.
I would love to. The While We Were Working segment of our show is where we take a look at news, blogs, anything that's current in terms of business, people leadership, and we try to find something that we think would be really interesting to talk about. And we know you probably missed it because you were so busy working. So this week, we're talking about an article that was in Inc. magazine. This was online, and it's called The Top 5 Workplace Trends on TikTok That Will Make You Worry, and make you worry about the state of employee-employer relations. So, of course, Joey, anything that has TikTok trends and employee-employer relations in the title totally drew me in. And this was written by Jessica Stillman, which I loved her handle, Entry Level Rebel. I love how, she was really just kind of able to break this down in an easy to digest manner and give us something really cool to talk about today.
Now, Summer, when we talk about these, is there going to be a dance tutorial? We're dancing today. No?
Oh, not on my watch. There won't be. But, I think it's really interesting to me that, some of these hashtags were so trending. And I think at the end, you'll see that there's kind of a common theme that all of them have. And it's really relevant to the work that we do and the organizations we support. So I thought it was worth just chatting about a little more today.
Yeah. And businesses, you can think that your employees aren't on TikTok, at work or before and after work, but they are. It's a massive, massive social media. These days, social media is shared all across. So you can share a TikTok on Twitter. You can share a Facebook post on LinkedIn. So if your head is in the sand with a lot of these things that we're talking about, first of all, I don't know how, because we're all inundated with some of these hashtags that we're talking about. But it's very important to pay attention to these trends if you want to help shape great work culture. If you don't care, just skip over to the gossip stuff that we're going to talk about later. But if you want to create a great place people enjoy being at, listen to what sentiment exists out there. So the first one that we want to talk about today, this is everybody's favorite. I don't think we can get enough of this. I'm actually kidding. That's sarcasm. Quiet quitting. So quiet quitting has on TikTok almost 750 million views. So what this tells me is if you want to go viral on TikTok for any reason at all, just talk about or use the hashtag quiet quitting. And basically, what quiet quitting is, entry level rebel does a great job of explaining it, but I'll do it in my own terms. Is whether you are burned out, so you are putting in less than a honest day's effort, or you are kind of just like mailing it in and taking it easy, and you're not putting in an honest day's effort. That's what quiet quitting is. You are slowing back on your productivity without saying why. And so it's got a lot of views, 746 million views on TikTok. I think I want to go make a TikTok now. But no, Summer, what do you think?
Yeah, it was a really trendy term, I think, gosh, late last year. I mean, it seemed like it was popping up all over the place, and, when we really started to talk about it some more, we realized, like, "Okay, well, this isn't anything new," but I think it's really relevant, and perhaps part of it is, kind of coming out of COVID and where so many people had been working from home and, maybe had a little less oversight than they did when they were in office, and it now afforded them maybe a little more room to do the bare minimum.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of a I don't wanna say a perfect storm, but you do have the combination of all of these factors coming together, and, when I think about how I would feel if I had a member on my team who was doing the bare minimum, I personally would be really I would be really frustrated. I'd I'd be really upset and bothered because if you have somebody who is working their tail off to try to help the company succeed, and then, you look virtually to your left and your right, and your other team members are barely getting by, like, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, and as a person who empowers people at work, you gotta look at this to say, well, what's going on in my business or what's going on in my department where people are choosing to quiet quit?
Mhm,
So, I try to have empathy. So I look at it, I've always looked at quiet quitting for 2 reasons. One, if folks are burnt out and maybe there's, a lot of work to go around and not enough people. But then also to the other side of it, definitely to your point, Summer, if you're not carrying your weight and your workload, that that reflects badly on other
mhm,
people, and so I gotta look at it to say, this is like the number one workplace trend on social media right now. Is my business safe from, quiet quitting? How would I know? Can I track things? Can I have conversations with people? Do I have enough
mhm,
trust built in the relationships at work where people could be honest and say, "Hey, I'm feeling some type of way about my job."
mhm,
Um, you should be paying attention. If there are this many views
mhm.
of this hashtag, you gotta pay attention to what's going on.
Yes, and I think if you had mentioned a question like, "Well, how would I know if this is happening?" And, if you don't have that layer of trust already built, I mean, that's where you're going to have to start, right, in order to have these honest conversations. But I think the way to identify it is actually mentioned in this article. Quiet quitting is truly just treating your job as a job. That's all that it is. Like there's no personal fulfillment in it. So I think if you can have those honest conversations and get down to like the level of fulfillment that individuals have in their roles, you can start to determine whether they are or aren't going to fall into this category. And of course, if you find that there isn't much or any fulfillment for them in their role, then to have conversations to see if there are things that you can change to help bring that to them. And sometimes that may not be within your organization, and that would be unfortunate, but every individual deserves that fulfillment, and every employer deserves having employees who are fulfilled. So if it's not a match, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the word we throw around quite a bit is at will, and so that reminds us that everyone has a choice. And so you want to create an environment where people want to choose to work with you. But if not, it's not the end of the world. There are opportunities that probably are better suited for them, and then you want someone on your team who's better suited for your mission. So yeah, quiet quitting, that's a big one. The next one that we will take a look at doesn't have as many views, but it's an interesting one. It's got almost 500 million views. Act your wage, which I have never seen this before. So act your wage is, gosh, can you explain this better than I could? I'm grasping.
Sure, sure. Well, I've heard it a couple of times, but I did not realize that it was so popular. Again, it's probably because I don't fall into that really cool hip demographic for like being on TikTok, and okay, I'm all right with that. But act your wage is essentially only putting in as much effort as you're actually paid for. Now, I don't know how one would truly measure that, but I have to imagine that you know, employees who perhaps believe or are indeed underpaid are again going to do that bare minimum.
Yeah, and, this is, I guess, the assumption that you are underpaid, and so if you're underpaid, you will scale it back a bit because I don't think the trend exists out there where it's like, "Oh, I'm overpaid, so I've got to overwork." No, it's fascinating, it's fascinating. I guess we are in an era where doing what feels right or like true to self or self interest is the guiding force and factor. Which, I mean, I guess like a philosophical theoretical standpoint that should be true all the time. But I guess the challenge is when feeling what is true and right and fair for you is on the opposite end of the spectrum of the employer. And so that's why we exist, right? We help to get people on the same page, right? We want people more excited about Monday than Friday. So we want acting your wage to be, being productive and happy and thrilled to do what it is you're hired to do. But I hadn't seen this trend. I'm afraid to go down the rabbit trail and look at it after the show. But in the interest of time, we'll go to this next one. This one's pretty common, although it's been viewed on Instagram or TikTok less. This one only has 19 million views, 19.9 million. It's quiet firing. So quiet firing it's a new word for an old thing. So quiet firing is you create this hostile environment for a person where they get so disgruntled, so upset that they say, "Forget it. I'm quitting. I'm leaving. I can't stand it. You all are idiots here." But ultimately that's what management wanted. And so it's nudging people out. And if I were to create a TikTok video about quiet firing, I would say don't. There are better ways to part ways with folks. There are better ways to have conversations about how people are feeling at work, and just don't quiet fire. But what do you think, Summer?
I think that's solid advice. I mean, I feel like it's kind of the easy way out for an employer, and maybe not even easy because you could potentially make a team member so frustrated that now they feel compelled to seek some sort of justice or seek some sort of revenge because they felt like they were done wrong. So, I think it's definitely not a recommended approach, but based on the number of views, it tells me that it's likely happening more often than we might think, but I'm ready to move on to number 4. How about you?
Yeah, go for it. Set it up. What's number 4?
Again, I feel so old because I didn't hear of this one either, but, it's called rage applying, and the hashtag
Oh, I've seen
rage
this.
applying actually, excuse me, had 6 million views on TikTok.
So with rage applying, that one is I've seen it. People are frustrated with their job. So maybe, they were frustrated on Friday, so on Saturday and Sunday, they're just applying. They don't even care where, they're just applying. they're applying to jobs. It's problematic for a few reasons. It's problematic, one, as an employee, because if you're feeling some type of way about your job, then, try to find a good way or a healthy outlet or a workplace BFF where you can chat about it. But it's terrible for employers and recruiters because as soon as your application comes in, we are expecting that you wanna work here. And so if it's just like, you're upset at your job, and so you applied all these places that you may or may not be qualified for, and then that recruiter calls, you wasted the recruiter's time if all you're saying is, "Oh, I changed my mind. We made up. It's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna stick around." But yeah, rage applying is you're so frustrated with your job that you're just blindly and erratically applying elsewhere so that you can, at least be validated that, that you're wanted, that you're valued.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Hadn't heard of rage applying before, but it totally makes sense. I think, there's kind of very similar habits that occur in other behaviors and other aspects of people's life. So totally not surprising. But that one had 6 million views. And then rounding out this list, number 5 was quiet hiring at 5.3 million. Had you heard of that one?
No, I haven't, but in reading about it, it definitely feels like an old term with a new life.
I feel like most, if not all of these are, but the definition of quiet hiring is simply, instead of companies actually hiring more staff to do their work, they're squeezing more out of their existing staff. So that's nothing new. We've seen that when companies have had to go through layoffs, that's exactly what happens. But I think, this is a likely kind of a slightly different situation where, like, instead of it being the effect of a downturn, it's like, a company actually making a strategic decision saying, hey, like, we really should hire and we really need to hire based on our labor model, but we're going to just divvy these accounts or whatever it is among our current team, and then we're not going to have to hire somebody yet.
Yeah, yeah. So as a person who, if you empower people at work, this quiet hiring piece, we get it, understand it's part of business, right? There are great days in business, great seasons, and then there are bad seasons. So every business can have seasons of what is here is called quiet hiring. I think if you ask a consultant, they would just say it's resource planning. But again, one of the values that we have at our business is ignite the spark and be part coach, part cheerleader. And so with those values, we just try to make work enjoyable, or at least have some optimism there, even in tough times. And so if you are quiet hiring, maybe try to find ways to make that to celebrate, whether it's like, I don't know, gatherings or recognition for people pulling extra weight, doing something to help people stand out and be recognized for carrying that extra load.
Absolutely. I would also say that the big takeaway from all of these is to really recognize that, team members are they're feeling undervalued. And I recognize it can be a very difficult time for many businesses right now. And, kind of the old ways of rewarding and recognizing their team members may not be available to them. But I think at a minimum, opening those lines of communication with your team about the state of the business, where you are and where you're headed, and building that trust we talked about, starting to have those honest conversations with team members to determine, are we meeting their needs? Are we able to meet their needs in the future? And then making steps towards that can help improve that level of satisfaction, that level of appreciation that team members feel. And hopefully, we'll see some lower trends of these hashtags on the various social media in the coming months. But I think it's definitely an indicator that there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we didn't curate this list, so we're relying on the author. We're relying on Jessica that these truly are the top 5 workplace trends. But for the 5 workplace trends to be negative is a sign that either social media is a very dark place or we have a lot of work to do in our workplaces, or maybe it's a little column A, a little column B. But either way, you know, thanks for indulging in our conversation on that, and hope you got some tips to take away and be a better connector of your people and trust builder, so that they're not going viral for talking about how terrible of a boss you are, and then they quit their job and go be a social media influencer. We'll go ahead and shift into our next segment. Our next segment is Consultants Corner. And this is where we talk about life in the trenches, the good, the bad, the ugly of what it's like to be a consultant in the HR space and work with our phenomenal customers that we support. Now, sometimes we get cues and we make notes of like, oh, we should talk about this on the show from our customer. Sometimes people write into us at hello@jumpstart-hr.com. And so this week, we've got a pretty interesting topic that is probably an anchor topic in your business that you should have a handle on regardless. So this would essentially be management 101 or management 201. It's an essential. And this is, how do you address workplace communication challenges? Challenges such as poor communication, miscommunication, gossip, and behaviors that erode the ability to send and receive messages. So I'll kind of just go ahead here and give my first thing. And like I said first, right? Every business should have a handle on communication, or at least all be actively working towards communication, better communication. I am an advocate for the DISC assessment as a means for people to understand their communication style and their team communication style. We've got a disc coach on our team, Maria. She's awesome, and I had the privilege of joining her during a session where we had about 16 people in the room who had all undergone a disc assessment, and so we charted their communication style on a board, and the light bulbs went off in the room when people understood, oh, this is why I'm wired this way. This is why I like talking to these people. This is why I don't like talking to these people. This is why I work for this person. This is why I don't work for that person. So just, and this isn't a commercial, but really effective communication starts at understanding one another and realizing that we all have our own preferences, motivations, and really experience with communication. And so a DISC assessment does help with that. But to me, that's the first start. The first place to start is know yourself, know your team, and then that will lay out the challenges that you need to work.
Gosh, Joey, there are so many nuggets in what you just said, like just gems of information. Because when the first time I took a DISC assessment, I was completely blown away of like, well, how can like just answering some of these questions tell me so much about myself? And I think I kind of resisted it at first, like, this can't be true. Like, I'm not this outgoing. And then everybody around me is like, yes, you are. But I think more so than just truly recognizing my own style, learning what the other styles are and how to read them, like how to recognize them was truly one of the biggest gifts as, as a professional. I think I've learned because communication is it's the core of everything that we do. So for example, the moment that I realized that my CEO and CFO that I worked for were all about details, then I had that aha moment of why they were always frustrated with me because naturally I'm not about details. So now I knew, like, okay, I had to do my homework before I'd go and have a conversation with them to communicate in a way that they needed.
Yeah.
Similarly, if I had a boss who was very like short and concise and like, wanted me to hurry up and get through things, and naturally, I just like to talk and tell stories, I'm going to frustrate them. So I think, that's just a little quick story there about the value of not only DISC, but understanding your own style and recognizing the styles of others. But, it makes me think about, I'm sure everybody's had a situation where, like, you're talking to somebody, and despite what you're sharing with them and they're sharing back to you, it's like you're on 2 different wavelengths. Have you ever had that? And it's like, "Why are you not understanding?" And then the
Yeah.
other person is like, "Well, why aren't you understanding?"
Sometimes I'll even it's bad, but sometimes I'll zone out. I'm like, "Wait, this conversation can't be going the way that it's going because they're not speaking the same thing I'm speaking."
Right? And I think I've seen a lot of miscommunication happen, like, via chat, via email, right? Because we don't have a lot of, like, we don't have the same, like, cues and clues that we do when we're actually talking and, face to face or through video. But I think, some of the key takeaways is first understanding styles, how to recognize them. From there, it's also understanding which methods of communication are most effective for what you're attempting to accomplish, right? Because, like, Joey, what's your preferred method and least favorite method of communication?
I guess my preferred method is probably like a message, like a Slack or a text,
Mhm,
and my least preferred is a phone call.
mhm,
And then I guess maybe my second favorite would be, in person, face to face.
mhm. And, I think it's cool that you shared that because, I'll talk to other folks who are like, "Do not text me ever, just call me,"
Yeah, why didn't you pick up the phone?
right? "Just call
Because I
me."
hate it.
And so I think, learning what others prefer is part of it, but also recognizing that, if you have this long, or what you expect is going to be a complex conversation, trying to do that via Slack or by text is, like, not the most effective communication. And furthermore, I think I talked about this on one of our other episodes. It's so easy for things to get lost in text, like, just, understanding what
Yeah.
somebody is saying. So I have the golden rule, which I swear is, like, guided me, has always steered me right. And that is most respectful interpretation. So that means that when you read something and you feel yourself getting a little heated, then you pause and you say, "Hold on, let me reread this with the most respectful interpretation." And it's interesting how you can actually read the same exact words
Yeah.
and they have
Yeah.
a totally different meaning depending on, like, your mindset in that moment.
Yeah. Believing the best about others is so key because then that helps even just, with the relationship between you two. If there is a touchy topic that you gotta chat about. One thing we could talk about too is with gossip. So the person wrote in about how do you stop gossip? Well, I think everyone has to play a part in stopping gossip in the sense that if you hear it, like Summer said about the thing previously, redirect towards the most positive interpretation about the other person that they're being as being gossiped about, um, and not participating in the gossip. Um, you know, you can have policies and procedures for workplace communication, but at the end of the day, people are going to be people, and you want to just create an environment and reinforce behaviors to celebrate behaviors that stem from great communication. So instead of gossiping, you might want to have people say, "Hey, if I don't feel comfortable going to someone about a topic, can you come along with me? Or can I bring it to my manager and they talk about it?" And then the other thing that was brought up was, poor communication. You know, take a class Identify what good communication looks like in an organization, and remember to hold people to those standards. So, good communication might look like, hey, what does the preparation look like for us going into a meeting? What does preparation look like going after a meeting? What does preparation look like for this type of call? What does preparation look like when we are, just chatting and catching up? So having guidelines is a good way for people to create those checklists of whether they're communicating poorly or communicating.
Those are so many great tips. I think communication, it seems easy, but it's so easy to do it wrong. I mean, with all of the different methods that we have to communicate with how busy everybody is, you do have to be intentional. And I think we've laid out a handful of great tips on how team members and managers can improve their communication skills. But I'll also take a moment to mention that as part of our Jumpstart HR consulting services, we provide trainings, customized training specific for your team members. And we also provide manager and leadership coaching. So if you're listening to this and thinking, gosh, I'd love to hear about those DISC assessments or, just even love for you to do a training with my team to help them improve communication, reach out to us. We'd love to chat and talk to you about how we can help improve skills within your organization.
Yeah. So, you know, communication, everything rises and falls on it. Your ability to attract people to your team, your ability to win clients, your ability to stay in business. Communication is so important, and you want to stay in business with great people who also value communication. So let's talk, and you can check out our past episode for other topics that we go into, all about empowering people at work in your business. So have a great one, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.